we went in and they said, you know, this tumor has hit such a growth spurt and we need to make sure that this isn't a high-grade glioma. And I said, well, what if it is? They said, your daughter will not live to see her second birthday.
Thank you for allowing people to open their minds, Lord, to see that this is your gift to us, your gift from heaven, that you have given us this medicine to treat our babies.
When we found out about Sophie's brain tumor, I had no idea this would be the gift from God to her.
Amen.
When your kid's got cancer, the rule book goes out the window, really. You need to get them well and you need to do everything that you can to make them well, and I wouldn't feel right if I didn't explore everything that there was.
They found over 20 tumors in his chest. At that time, Dr. Storch told us, now is the time to do alternative medicine.
People have been using cannabis as a medicine for 5,000 years. THC has always been kind of the star of the show because it's the most psychoactive. But then research started showing that there were a lot of other cannabinoids in the plant that had as many, if not more, therapeutic effects.
For me, one of the most exciting areas is cannabis an anti-cancer agent? The number of different ways that cannabis and cannabinoids in the test tube seem to suppress cancer is quite impressive. But in oncology, we often say the plural of anecdote is not evidence.
Cancer cells plus cannabis together in a petri dish. We know what happens there. There's a lot of studies that show that.
Right.
We do not have human studies, and certainly we don't have studies in pediatrics.
Perfect. Look at that.
If we want to use marijuana as a medicine, we need to make it a medicine. We haven't done that yet.
My friend dying from pancreatic cancer can't wait for studies.
Yeah.
My child can't
That's the problem. The controversy about it kind of makes me mad because it's at the cost of our children. You know, it's at the cost of our loved ones. And a lot of people don't want to try this because of the reputation.
One can argue that there's a human right to have the government provide you with a medicine. But at the very least, there has to be a consensus that the government should never deprive you of access to a medicine which can be helpful.
Why, as a society, are we denying people the use of something that I have seen firsthand over and over and over again be helpful?
You ready to kick cancer in the butt?
Yay! Oh, I'm so excited. It started off with a swollen tonsil, which I just thought was a throat infection, so it didn't concern me too much. So then the lump didn't go away with the antibiotics, so he got admitted, and that's when they thought he had 10 days before it blocked his airways, and 8 days later he got the diagnosis. I was really surprised when the doctor came in and handed me this treatment plan, and I just thought, that's really odd that it's already been designed. And then I realised that it was one size fits all for that particular diagnosis, that type of cancer. Then I was quite worried when he said, oh, this was devised in the 70s. And I said, what, it's not been changed since the 70s? And he said, oh, well, yeah, slightly, you know, but fundamentally, because kids' cancer is quite rare, not much research gets done, which I find quite worrying, because you'd hope that with medical advances, things would have changed slightly. He's the single worst case of chemo-induced nausea that they've ever seen. Literally, we've tried everything that they have on their list of options. We've tried everything. And then there was the marijuana. And marijuana's the only thing that's really... I mean, it doesn't work all the time, but when it works, it really, really works. Then I started reading about cannabis oil and the anti-tumour properties of it, and I thought, well, if we're using it to treat the symptoms, we might as well give him the anti-tumour dose at the same time. It's all about supporting the side effects and helping the chemo to do its job of getting rid of the cancer. They're the two main things that I'm trying to do with this.
When we first came here, I was kind of clueless. I had no idea what pediatric oncology meant, so that was terrifying. You know, even though I've done this like more than 100 times, I still get a little afraid of the needle. Hello. Hi, Rosemary. Hi, how are you? I'm tired but good. How are you doing?
Good, thank you.
That's good.
We're gonna count 1 to 3, right?
Yeah, and then 3 is when you put it in, like always.
1, 2, 3.
AJ's 17 years old now. We first found out that he had cancer. He was 13. He was 13 years old. We found out that it was osteosarcoma cancer, bone cancer. By the time that they caught it, he was already stage 4. I believe it was the second chemo. His lungs collapsed because the cancer had spread to his lungs, also being stage 4. That trip was like 6-8 weeks solid in the hospital, that she lived in the hospital with him. It came back again, and it was basically in his spine. But I think they took out 2, 3, and 4, and then put a steel cage in.
And they removed his ribs?
And then they removed some of his ribs where it was attached to, I think, 1 or 2 on each side?
2 on each side.
2 on each side.
Since my hand has kind of been messed up after one of the surgeries on my back, they had to sever some of the nerves, and those nerves were going to my hand. So my fire button used to be my mouse 1, but I changed it to looking into my dinosaurs inventory instead.
A month and a half after the surgery, he was sick, he didn't feel good. They found over 20 tumors in his chest. It was very bleak at that point, and AJ does not know how bleak it was. We've never told him that. He's a 17-year-old kid. He needs to concentrate on getting better.
Brano is down for the count. Hey, survival of the fittest.
This is the raw oil form that we get when we buy it.
When we started using it, we had to get a permit, and then we could start actually getting it from the dealer, I guess is the right term, distributor. I'm not sure what the correct term is to not make it look bad or sound bad.
Sheila and AJ get out and go upstairs, and I'm driving the truck in Beverly Hills, circling the parking lot, trying to find a place to park. I can't even find a place to park. She gets in her truck, AJ gets in her truck, and she's got this little teeny bag, and I'm like, okay, so what was it? And she's crying, and she's like, I wish you could have been there because of all these questions. And I'm like, okay, so I'm curious, what is this stuff? What is it? What is it, and how much did we spend?
Yeah.
And so she pulls out these 2 little syringes that are like 10 grams or 10 milliliters, like supposedly all the same or something like that. And there's 2 of them. And she goes, this was $1,010 for those 2. And I'm like, it's our son. What do you do?
Hi, Tracy.
Hi, so nice to meet you.
So nice to meet you.
Thank you so much for coming all this way.
Oh, honey, it's
I know
my
you've had
pleasure.
This is Sophie.
Hi,
Sophie.
I'll let
You
you
just
wake
got her up
up.
from her nap. Yeah, she's still waking up.
Oh,
She is.
Yeah,
She's always been
she's
that
quite
way.
the special
Really?
little baby. Neither one of us could imagine putting our tiny little baby through chemo. And the day that we decided to not do chemo was the day that I felt like I could breathe again, and I'm sure he would say the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just so counterintuitive
Ugh.
to do it.
We got the scans, said it was an optic pathway glioma.
Here's the core of the mass sitting right there on the optic cross.
These are excellent pictures.
Here. Oh, and this is only one of them. And then here. This one is of her spine. Her spine's totally clear, so it's
Thank
not
God.
metastasized or spread in any way. And then this
Is that the most natural, normal place for it to go?
Yes.
Right.
None of that.
Okay. Let me just mention this. I don't have medical training. I don't claim to have medical training. I just have something that I feel is more important, and that's experience. We're going to have to experiment. There might be times when, as we're figuring out what her dose is, we might go, oh, okay, that's too much. It can't hurt her. If it is too much, all it's going to take is the hours of it getting out of her system.
And that's what we love so much about this, is that she's not going to be suffering. She's not going to be in pain. We don't have to watch her deteriorate. She's perfect, health-wise.
Yeah.
She's had one cold in 9 months, and that's because Daddy
Except for
gave it
that
to her.
damn cancer.
Except for that huge mass in her brain.
Yeah.
That's the only thing. Yeah.
So literally 1,000 stars had to align for us to finally change our mind on cannabis. That was the only thing that we just completely dismissed and refused to research because we just thought it was so ridiculous.
We looked at everything else but that.
And it was all from Facebook. One of those mommies said, look, there's a lot of legitimate science going on around it. So we started really looking at this positive research on cannabis. And I said, honey, this could be it.
So how do we...
It's the first time. I'll just go ahead and do it, okay?
Okay, sure.
Now, I'm giving her a tiny, tiny amount this first time, okay?
Okay.
Since she's never been exposed to this. And then you draw back on this so it doesn't keep pouring out.
Okay.
Okay?
Here, let me mama. Oh, here we go. Good job, honey. Will she feel any of the THC, or is that CBD going to
know until
she?
Everybody's different.
Yeah.
If she has her breakfast at 10:30, then you're not going to be giving her this until probably 11:30 or
Right.
so, and then we don't have time to get 3 doses in.
Okay.
So let's start out at 2 doses and see how she does.
Well, we can wake her up earlier.
I know, but let's do as little to disrupt your day.
Okay.
2 is going to be fine. It's not going to be the day. I know how. I've come to learn over the years that we're not that powerful. We can do the best we can. We can, whatever. But whatever's going to happen is going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
We're just not that powerful.
Just gonna do what's best.
I know, and I understand that. And you're a wonderful, wonderful mother, and you're doing an amazing job.
Thank you.
So for now, let's just start with 2 a day.
Okay.
Well, we're awfully happy to be able to help and be part of
we're
her
happy
journey.
to have you. We really, truly are. We cannot tell you how much this means to us.
Okay.
Oh, yes. Let's put her to sleep.
You want to go wake up?
You want to go night-night, Mobile?
Go night-night.
You want to go night-night? Let's Mommy get you some milk ready.
Sophie,
Actually,
we're going to get you better.
it's a little bit past my head.
You're going to live a long life.
This is ground up like a medium ground coffee grind. It's what we found works out the best.
No matter what, no bubbles, completely decarboxylated all the air. I went in for a pretty routine surgery. When I got out, I had hospital-acquired spinal meningitis. They sent me home from the hospital on fentanyl patches, morphine, all kinds of horrible drugs, and basically said, here, this is the rest of your life. I'd gone from being this incredibly vibrant, can do anything person to I'm the one sitting there watching while everybody else is living their life and I'm doing nothing. I identify as a Dallas girl, as a Texan in a lot of ways, a Jewish Texan, which is even weirder. I never liked cannabis. I was one of those people that smoked pot a few times and was like, I don't like the way it makes me feel. On the other hand, I had to do something because life was becoming less worthwhile living day by day.
Oh, it's gorgeous.
Okay. Be careful with that water while I'm over here with the weed. You know how I feel about that.
It's done. There's not even a dose left in that.
Okay. Want to taste it?
Purple Urkel.
What I found was no consistency, no predictability, certainly nothing that remotely resembled medicine. So as a process engineer, I'm going to have to do it myself.
And we learned that we had to activate it first, or decarboxylate it, and then you can cook that into an oil base. And so we went in the cookbook and tried to find the recipe with the most oil in it.
The first thing I made was my Aunt Zelda's carrot cake. I can gauge how strong I made it by how much of regular oil versus infused oil I put in it. Then we would weigh the piece and know exactly what the dose was in each and every piece. And that's called medicine. What's happened just from having the cannabis as far as improving my health, it's just been miraculous.
Hey, Nance, Mara here. I just wanted to let you know, I know you've got the .054 capsules of the Canatonic. If there's any way you can back off a little bit on the morphine and oxycodone, that would be really great. I have to make up the medicine for Linda. That Marie. The way I manage this is pretty much with my hair on fire all the time. Unfortunately, it's just Stuart and me.
The biggest problem with cannabis is that everybody has such a different tolerance for it that the biggest problem is dosing. And that's why we're dosing specialists.
Now, what do you recommend for Linda for her cancer? She's at stage 4. It's in both lungs now. It's all through her abdomen. So we really have to get aggressive at this point.
But she doesn't want to have that feeling of that quote-unquote stoniness, the high THC. I was thinking about putting her on the Williams Wonder and then cutting it with the Canatonic.
That's a good plan.
Okay.
Marie.
As many people as we can help, I mean, we just can't say no. I mean, how can you say no to a needy person? I mean, how can we send them somewhere where they're just going to get bad product or bad information?
The whole protocol is going to be about £1, which is like $1,200 is about what we pay for it. And we just pass that on to you, and then we cover the overhead.
Well, how did you find us? Google. I didn't even know we were on Google.
Take care. Help's on the way.
Reduction went from 30% to 70% seizure reduction. I've been a physician now for 24 years. I made the change from pediatric ER to cannabis practice because I knew someone who was using medical cannabis who was sick. And seeing her do so well with this, I thought, wow, here I am a doctor and I don't even have an opinion because I don't know. So that's kind of where then I started that quest for knowledge to make myself a person who understands this and then can help other people understand it. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for getting up early to come here and hear me speak. I have seen things that we can call miracles, and I think it's really important to understand that to a family that's suffering, it feels like a miracle, but it's really just science, and there's no reason to be afraid of it, and there's no reason that this is not an option for everyone. In 1988, researchers discovered living things, humans, have cannabinoid receptors in their brains.
Most people are familiar with dopamine, serotonin, norepinephrine, classical neurotransmitters. Neurotransmitters are chemicals that allow neurons to talk to each other. When neuron A talks to neuron B, it sends a chemical messenger across the synapse, and that binds to receptors at neuron B, and then that turns into electricity.
What we've discovered is that there's a part of that system is governed by cannabinoid compounds. These are just molecules that we have that bind to these specific receptors, and they seem to play a role in smoothing out the whole communication process.
It seems to be so important that a group at NIH recently published a review and said that the endocannabinoid system is involved in essentially all human diseases. Now that's a very strong statement. Very strong.
Those receptors are not there for the cannabis plant, but it turns out that the cannabis plant compounds called cannabinoids work at those receptors.
So when you take a cannabinoid in from outside by smoking or vaporizing or eating or a pharmaceutical, you are somehow tinkering with that system and adjusting the way in which those nerves and muscles and communications happen.
I often joke around with my patients, it's not magic fairy dust, it's not voodoo. There are chemical compounds in the plant that interact with the cells in our brains and in our bodies and have certain reactions. It's the same as every other drug. It's just came from a plant.
I, as an herbalist, felt duped, felt lied to. As I tell people about magnificent herbs all the time, cannabis was just off limits. I mean, I was in that culture of it. I thought it was this poisonous weed. I have 9 children, and I have seen a lot of people with cancer. These experiences are just too overwhelming to ignore. I looked at my books and said, there has to be cannabis in here. I've never looked for it, and it was everywhere. They start out with, this is so well known to every good housewife in the country that I shall not